mom believes I betrayed my family, all because I refused to cancel my honeymoon that cost $12,750 so I could fly home and babysit my younger brother and sister, and this happened exactly 21 hours after my wedding. My wife and I were standing in the customs line at Heathrow Airport. We had just landed. It was early morning. We were exhausted, but we were happy in that rare way people are only during the first day of marriage. We had a honeymoon in Scotland ahead of us. We had planned it for 9 months. 9 full months. We are not the kind of people who can casually spend $12,750 without thinking about it. We saved for it. We skipped unnecessary purchases. I worked extra shifts. She took on freelance work during weekends. We wanted this trip to mean something. We wanted castles in the Highlands, small hotels in the mountains, long walks in cold, misty air, distillery tours, quiet mornings together. This was supposed to be our first big adventure as husband and wife. And then my phone started vibrating. At first I thought it was wedding congratulations, but it did not stop. I looked at my screen, 31 messages, all from my mom. The first one said emergency family meeting, and I felt my knees go weak. My wife Harper immediately noticed something was wrong. She leaned closer and read over my shoulder. I watched her expression change. From sleepy curiosity to tension to frustration, the messages kept coming. Where are you? You need to come back. Family is more important than vacation. I cannot believe you left. If you do not fly back, do not call me your mother again. Harper looked at me and quietly said, "She is joking, right?" I did not answer because I knew she was not joking. Here's what the emergency actually was. My mom decided to go on a trip with her boyfriend, and she needed someone to stay with my younger siblings. She knew my wedding date, she knew our honeymoon dates. We had talked about it many times, but somehow she still expected that if she needed me, I would cancel everything. Because that is what I had always done before I am the oldest child. And if you are the oldest child, you probably understand. It is a role you never asked for, but you are given it anyway. Need someone to pick up the kids from school? That was me. Need someone to babysit on weekends? That was me. Need someone to give up their plans? That was me. I canceled dates. I postponed trips with friends. I turned down work opportunities. Every time I tried to say no, it was the same reaction. You are selfish. Do we mean nothing to you? Family does not act like this. And the worst part is that it worked. Guilt is powerful. It makes you feel like love is something you have to earn by sacrifice. So there I was, married for 21 hours, standing in an airport in another country, feeling that same familiar wave of guilt, like I owed something, like I was responsible. I called her. She answered immediately. "Are you coming back?" she asked. "No hello, no congratulations." I said, "Mom, I just got married. I am in another country." She said, "I do not care. Family comes first." I said, "I have a family now too." And then she said the sentence, "I will never forget. If you do not get on a plane today, do not ever call me again." And something inside me shifted. In the past, I would have panicked. I would have apologized. I might have even searched for flights. But I looked at Harper. She was not speaking. She was just watching me. And in her eyes, there was one question. Are you going to choose guilt again, or are you going to choose us? I realized this was not just about a flight. It was about who I was going to be from this moment forward. Either I stayed the son who always fixed everything, or I became a husband who protected his own marriage. I took a deep breath and I said, "I am not coming back." There was silence. Then she said, "Then you are no longer my son," and I ended the call. For the next few hours, I felt numb. It hurt. It scared me. And yes, I felt guilty, but underneath all of that, there was something else. Relief. For the first time, I had chosen my own life without apologizing for it, and in that relief, I began noticing small things about myself I had not before I realized how little I had allowed myself to dream beyond immediate responsibilities. The freedom of this choice made me think of the future with Harper differently. We walked to our hotel in Edinburgh that evening and talked not just about the next few days of the trip, but about the years ahead, about how we wanted our marriage to look, how we might handle challenges together, how we would support each other's ambitions without losing ourselves. It felt strange but empowering to discuss plans without guilt lurking in the corner. We even laughed at the absurdity of the situation, how my very existence had been a kind of on-demand service for family obligations. And yet here I was, negotiating life like an equal with my wife. It was intoxicating and terrifying all at once. I could see how these small moments of autonomy were building my confidence slowly, like bricks laid carefully into a structure that had been shaky for so long. And I also noticed Harper's relief. She did not have to tiptoe around my responses or worry about me bending over backward to appease family expectations. She could see me setting a boundary and holding it firmly, and that steadiness created intimacy. That shared strength allowed us to dream bigger trips, adventures, and plans that were not dictated by anyone else's emergencies. It was the beginning of a new rhythm in our lives, one where choices were deliberate and consequences respected, not dictated by guilt. Over the next 3 days, my phone would not stop. Relatives messaged me, my aunt, my cousin, even a family friend. You abandoned your mother. You changed after getting married. Your wife is controlling you. And I kept thinking, yes, I changed. I got married. Marriage is not just a party. It is a commitment. It means creating a new family unit. It means that your spouse becomes your priority. That does not erase your parents, but it changes the balance. It was the best honeymoon of my life. We walked through the Highlands. We stayed one night in a historic castle. We laughed constantly. We talked about our future. And for the first time in years, I did not check my phone every 5 minutes. I was not waiting for the next crisis. I was not bracing myself for another emergency. I was just present, just a husband standing next to the woman he loves. When we came home, my mom did not speak to me. 1 month passed, then 2. Eventually, a short message arrived. I hope you are happy. I replied, yes, I am, and that was the truth. A year passed. Our marriage grew stronger. We were building a life together. Things with my mom slowly stabilized, but the rules were different. I was no longer the backup parent. I was no longer the automatic solution. I was still a son, but I was also a husband, and that shift changed everything. What happened next was not loud or dramatic. It was subtle and stretched over months. The silence from my family had weight. Group chat stayed quiet when I wrote something. Invitations were inconsistent. Stories about me traveled faster than the truth I heard, that my mom was telling people I chose my wife over blood, that I abandoned responsibility, that I let myself be controlled. That narrative hurt because it was simple, and simple stories spread easily. It is much harder to explain emotional conditioning, years of guilt, quiet obligation. The unspoken rule that love equals sacrifice. I tried to ignore it, but silence followed me home. I became restless. I questioned myself. I asked Harper if I had handled it wrong. One night she said, I will support whatever relationship you want with your mother, but I will not compete with her for you. That sentence forced me to look at everything clearly. This was not about choosing between two people. It was about deciding who I was going to be. So I started therapy in my family. That would have been seen as weakness, but I needed clarity. I learned about enmeshment, about blurred boundaries, about how guilt can be programmed into you from childhood. I realized every time I tried to build something independent, there had been a crisis. Emergencies create urgency. Urgency blocks reflection. That airport moment was the first time I paused instead of reacting. Months later, my mom called again. Not to apologize, but to test the water, small talk at first. Then she said, I hope you understand why I was hurt. In the past, I would have rushed to comfort her. This time I said, I understand you were upset, but I was not wrong. The silence that followed was heavy but necessary. She changed the subject. That became our new pattern. She would hint I would stay firm. She would adjust slowly. The dynamic shifted. The first big test came when she asked for financial help. Her car had broken down. Old reflexes pushed me to immediately fix it. Instead, I asked questions. We agreed to split the cost. It was the first time support felt chosen, not demanded. Meanwhile, my marriage felt lighter. Without constant crises, we had space to plan. We talked about long-term goals. Savings, travel, a home. Maybe children. One day I realized when you are always reacting to someone else. Crisis, you cannot build your own future. Stability allowed growth. About a year later, we attended a large family gathering. I expected tension. Instead, I found something different. People move on faster than we imagine. The honeymoon story had lost momentum. My younger sister told me she was glad I had not come back, that if I had, the expectation would never have ended. That comment stayed with me. Breaking patterns changes more than one life. It resets expectations. Something inside me was no longer afraid of being disowned. If love can disappear as punishment, it was never unconditional. Looking back, Heathrow was not about a vacation. It was about identity. It was the moment I stepped out of being the fixer and into being a partner. If I had flown home, I know the cycle would have strengthened. Instead, I chose discomfort, and discomfort created clarity. And just when I thought the story, life decided to test me about 18 months after the honeymoon. But this time her voice, she told me her boy that things had not worked the way she expected, that managing everything alone again felt overwhelming. And for a brief second, I felt that old reflex, the urge to jump in, to fix, to rescue. Because when you grow up being the responsible one, your nervous system reacts before your logic does. But this time I paused, I listened, I did not interrupt, I did not offer immediate solutions, I simply asked, what do you need from me right now? And there was a long silence, longer than usual. Then she said, I do not know. That was new. My mother always knew exactly what she wanted from me, but now there was uncertainty. And in that uncertainty, something human appeared. Not the authority figure, not the guilt voice, just a person. We talked for almost an hour, not about money, not about babysitting, not about obligations, just about life, about how hard it is to adjust when children grow up, about how lonely that transition can feel. And for the first time, she admitted something. She said when you chose to stay on that honeymoon, it felt like I was losing you, not because of the babysitting, but because I realized you did not need me the same way anymore. And that scared me. That confession changed the entire narrative, because suddenly it was not a villain and a victim. It was fear. Her fear of being left behind, my fear of disappointing her. Two fears colliding in an airport and exploding. I told her something I had never said before. I said, I did not leave you. I just grew up. And growing up does not mean I love you less. It means I have to build something of my own. There was no dramatic apology, no cinematic reconciliation, just quiet understanding, and honestly, that felt more real. Over the next few months, our relationship slowly evolved. We spoke less often, but the conversations were healthier, shorter, more respectful. She started asking instead of demanding, and I started answering without resentment, not because the past disappeared, but because we both acknowledged it. One evening not long ago, she asked if Harper and I would come over for dinner. No emergency, no hidden request, just dinner. We went, and for the first time, I noticed something subtle. She did not introduce me as her responsible son. She introduced me as my husband. She said, this is my son and his wife. They just got back from another trip, and there was no sarcasm, no edge, just acceptance. On the drive home, Harper squeezed my hand, and she said, I am proud of you, not because I fought, not because I won, but because I stayed calm and consistent. That is something nobody talks about. Setting boundaries is not loud, it is repetitive, it is uncomfortable, it requires saying the same thing over and over until people realize you mean it. And sometimes they leave, and sometimes they adjust. But either way, you learn who you are. Now, when I look back at that morning at Heathrow, I do not see a dramatic rebellion. I see a quiet turning point, a moment where a pattern that existed for decades was interrupted. And interruption is powerful, because once you prove to yourself that you can choose differently, you can never fully go back. Do I regret the tension? No. Do I wish it had been easier? Of course, but easy would have meant staying small, and I was tired of being small. The truth is something no one tells you about adulthood. You will disappoint people, not because you are cruel, not because you are selfish, but because you stop being who they are used to. Growth changes dynamics, and not everyone celebrates that, but growth is necessary, because if you do not evolve, you repeat, you replay the same roles, the same conflicts, the same guilt over and over. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had boarded that plane home. Maybe nothing dramatic, maybe just a quiet resentment building inside my marriage. Maybe a small crack that widens over years. Maybe Harper would have understood, but she would have remembered. And I would have remembered that when faced with a choice, I chose comfort over commitment, and that memory would not disappear. Instead, we built something stronger, because that day I showed not just her, but myself. That our marriage mattered, that our future mattered, that my identity was not tied to being available on demand. And here is the part that surprises people. My siblings respect me more now. They call for advice, not for rescue. They make their own plans. They learned that I am their brother, not their substitute parent. Breaking the pattern gave them permission to grow too. So the airport was not the end. It was the beginning of healthier boundaries, of honest conversations, of a marriage built on partnership, not on sacrifice. And if there is one thing I learned, it is this. You can love your family deeply and still say no. You can care and still choose yourself. Those things are not opposites, they are balance. And balance takes courage. So after everything, after the messages, the silence, the tension, the slow rebuilding, I stand by that decision. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. And now I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think about it. If you were standing in that airport phone in your hand and newly married, faced with losing a parent or disappointing them, what would you do? Would you protect your past or your future? And now I am curious to hear from you. Was I selfish, or did I finally grow up? What would you have done in my place? Would you have canceled the honeymoon, or would you have stayed? Write your thoughts in the comments. It truly matters to me to hear different perspectives. And if you enjoy honest, real stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because life is sometimes more complicated than any script. And believe me, this was not the last story.